The river never slept. It shifted and murmured long after the world had folded into silence, its black waters whispering secrets only the night could carry. To some, it was a lullaby. To her, it was a warning. Elena stood on the crooked porch of her newly rented riverside home, staring at the waterline glinting beneath the pale moon. She had chosen this place for its solitude, for the way it seemed tucked away from the world. After the heartbreak that had split her chest like glass, she wanted quiet, healing, a chance to breathe. The landlord had smiled too easily when she signed the lease, his eyes flicking to the river and then away again. He had said little except one odd thing. If you hear the water calling, don't answer it. Elena had laughed politely then, chalking it up to local superstition. But that first night, as she lay awake in her narrow bed, she realized he had not been joking. For beneath the rhythmic pulse of the current, something else moved, voices low and fragmented carrying on the breeze. Whispers. It began with the sound. Always at night. Elena would lie awake, listening to the whispers thread through her walls. They were never words she could fully catch, syllables slipping like minnows, drowned by the river's eternal flow. Sometimes it sounded like her name. Other times like laughter buried deep underwater. She told herself it was just her mind, too much grief, too much wine. But on the fourth night, when she woke to wet handprints on the plaster of her bedroom wall, something inside her broke open. They were small, childlike, but slick, glistening as though someone had climbed out of the river and pressed their palms flat against the wall. She didn't scream. She simply stared, heart hammering, until dawn bled pale through the curtains. By morning, the prints had dried, leaving faint stains she could never scrub away. Days passed in uneasy rhythm. By sunlight, the river looked harmless, beautiful even. Fishermen worked along its banks. Children splashed in its shallows. She caught herself watching it for long stretches, mesmerized by its flow. But at night, the whispers returned, louder, sharper. Elena. She was sure of it now. Her name. Spoken not once but over and over like a breath brushing her ear. One night she rose, barefoot, and stepped onto the porch. The river shimmered under the moon, black and silver, restless as a living thing. And there at the water's edge she saw her. A woman. She stood knee-deep in the current, hair streaming like dark ribbons, eyes reflecting starlight. Her skin gleamed pale as bone, and though her lips did not move, the whispers grew louder. Elena gripped the porch railing, frozen. Something inside her should have screamed, terror, warning, flight. But instead she felt something else. Recognition. As though she had always known this figure. As though she had been waiting for her. When she blinked, the river was empty. The following morning, Elena went into town for groceries. The old shopkeeper, a wiry woman with sharp eyes, looked her over as though measuring her. "You're staying in the riverside house?" the woman said flatly. Elena nodded, uneasy. "They don't stay long, the ones before you." "Why not?" Elena asked. The woman shrugged, but her gaze was fixed. "The river takes what it wants. Always has. Best keep your curtains closed at night." Elena tried to laugh, but the woman did not smile. That night, Elena dreamed of drowning. Cold hands pulling her down, hair floating like weeds, whispers pressing against her skull. She woke with a gasp, sheets twisted, breath ragged. And then she saw them. Footprints. Leading from her door to her bed. Wet, glistening, fading into nothing at her mattress. The smell of river water filled her room, sharp, metallic, alive. Elena pressed her palm to her mouth, fighting a scream. Yet beneath the terror, something stirred. That same strange pull. She should have run. She should have packed her things and left before the sun rose. But she didn't. Instead, she found herself whispering into the dark. "Why me?" And the river answered with silence. Days blurred into nights. Elena no longer feared the whispers. She began to listen. They spoke of sorrow, of betrayal, of drowning brides and lost children. She caught flashes of stories, lives cut short, swallowed by the current. Sometimes, when she pressed her hand to the cold wall where the prince had first appeared, she swore she could feel a pulse, a heartbeat. And at the center of it all was her, the woman in the river. Elena saw her again and again. Always at night, always waiting, her pale form drifting just beneath the surface. Her eyes held Elena's, unblinking, endless. One evening, Elena stepped closer. Down to the water's edge. The whispers rose, surrounding her, tugging her forward like a tide. The woman's hand broke the surface, slender, dripping, impossibly white. Elena lifted her own, trembling, but did not pull away. Their fingers almost touched. Almost. The moment shattered when a fisherman's lantern bobbed in the distance. The figure sank back into the black, leaving ripples behind. The landlord came by to collect rent. Elena, half possessed by restless curiosity, asked him about the river. About the whispers. His face went pale. "There's a goddess in those waters," he said at last. "Older than memory. She was once a bride, betrayed and drowned. Now she waits, always waits. They say she takes women who are broken, women who are lost. Sometimes to torment them. Sometimes to crown them." "Crown them?" Elena whispered. "As her successors. Guardians of the river." His eyes narrowed. "Best you don't go near her." But Elena already knew it was too late. That night, the whispers were unbearable. They filled her skull, her lungs, her blood. She could not sleep. She could not breathe. Finally, barefoot, she walked to the river. The figure was waiting, luminous against the dark. The whispers hushed into silence as Elena stepped into the water. Cold licked her skin, biting, but she did not stop. The woman reached for her again, and this time Elena did not hesitate. Their hands met. The world drowned. Elena's chest burned. Her vision filled with rushing dark. She saw faces, dozens, hundreds, women whose eyes were empty, mouths whispering eternally. She felt their sorrow, their rage, their grief. And then, at the center of it all, the goddess's voice. "You belong to me." But beneath those words, another truth pulsed, softer, stranger. "Or you belong to the river." When Elena woke, she was on the bank, soaked, trembling. The dawn was pale, and the river was quiet for the first time since she had arrived. The whispers were gone. But something inside her had changed. When she lifted her hand, water dripped from her palm though it had never touched the river. When she closed her eyes, she could feel the current as though it pulsed in her veins. The river was no longer outside of her. It was part of her. She did not know if she had been saved or claimed, tormented or crowned. But she knew this: she would never leave the house. Not now. Not ever. Because the river wasn't finished with her. And she wasn't finished with it. Weeks later, a fisherman swore he saw a pale figure standing knee-deep in the current. Not the old goddess, but someone new. Someone younger. He swore her lips were moving. And though he could not hear her words, he could feel them in his bones, like whispers carried beneath the water. And so, the river remains. Some say Elena was taken. Others whisper she was chosen. But if you ever walk by the banks of that dark, endless water, listen closely. Do you hear her voice? Is she calling for help? Or is she waiting for you? The river never sleeps. And it never lets go. You've been listening to stories in the shadows. Tell me, would you have run from the whispers? Or would you have taken her hand? Because sometimes the river doesn't just take, it recruits. And maybe, just maybe, you're next.